My name is Alara, and the scent of gardenias is suffocating. It's the cloying, heavy perfume that hangs in the air of the Vance family's solarium, a place of impossible green and gilded opulence. It's the smell of my last life, the one that ended with my body breaking against the cold pavement. I blink, and the memory of the impact, a sickening crunch of bone and a final fleeting view of a distant, uncaring sky, recedes. The world snaps back into a focus that is both horrifying and familiar. I am standing on a polished marble floor, my mother's hand a light, proprietary pressure on my arm. Across from us stand the Vance brothers. And next to me my sister Chloe. In our previous life, we married into this dynasty on the same day. Chloe, with her theatrics, had recoiled from the eldest son, Cassian, calling him a brooding, possessive storm. She had rushed instead to claim the second son, Julian, a man as cold and remote as the Himalayan monasteries where he was raised, a devout Buddhist who saw the material world as an illusion. She couldn't bear the silence of that illusion, the loneliness of a marriage to a ghost. Her affair was a splash of garish color in her gray life, and in the end, Julian didn't shout or rage. He simply bound her wrists with his sacred prayer beads, turned her into a beautiful broken doll for his wealthy, jaded friends to play with, and watched her spirit erode with detached interest. I, deemed the plainer, more pragmatic sister, was given to Cassian. The world saw a love-obsessed man, volatile and intense. But I saw the key to the vault. I became the architect of his empire, the hand that guided his fortune. We presented a united front, a powerful, deeply connected couple, and in the quiet of our chambers, there was a fierce, possessive affection that grew from mutual respect. I had security, power, and a measure of contentment. Chloe's envy festered in the shadow of my success. It curdled into a rage so pure that on a rain-slicked balcony 42 floors up, she ended me. My body shattered into a pile of blood and flesh. And now I am back. The engagement party is in full swing around us, a murmur of silk and avarice. I feel the ghost of the fall in my bones, a phantom ache that sharpens my senses. I see the exact moment Chloe's consciousness, fresh from her own death, slams back into this moment. Her eyes, wide and disoriented for a second, then filling with a venomous, knowing glee. He has a plan. Our parents are mid-sentence, discussing the joining of our modest shipping line fortune with the Vance Empire's vast resources. Chloe had just finished declaring, with a dramatic flourish, that she would marry no one but Cassian. But now she pivots. She stumbles a little too artfully and shoves me hard into Julian's chest. Julian has always held a torch for Alara, she chirps, her voice dripping with false honey. He said he won't marry anyone else. Don't be shy, Lara. Go on, call him your husband. The small gathering falls silent. My parents look bewildered. Cassian's face darkens, a thunderhead gathering. But my focus is on the man whose chest I've been thrown against. Julian Vance is flawlessly handsome, with features carved from marble and eyes the color of a winter sea. There is a stillness to him that is unnerving, an aura of otherworldly detachment. In my past life, I only ever saw him at a distance, a silent figure at family functions, his fingers forever moving over a string of obsidian beads. Now, up close, I see the sharp intelligence in his gaze, the faint, almost imperceptible tightening of his lips. He is not a man who enjoys being a pawn in someone else's game. His hands come up to steady me, strong and surprisingly warm. A faint, clean scent of sandalwood and old paper wraps around me. It is the complete opposite of Cassian's expensive cologne. He sets me back on my feet with an efficient, impersonal motion. Be careful, Miss Alara, he says, his voice low and unreadable. I remember Chloe's fate in our first life. The prayer beads cutting into her skin, the humiliation. They called him the monk prince, this man raised among spiritual masters. They had no idea of the cold fury that lay beneath that tranquil surface. I have a choice. I can recoil, protest, play into Chloe's trap and earn Julian's immediate and permanent disdain. Or I can control the narrative. I lower my gaze, not in shyness but to hide the calculation in my eyes. I let a soft, bashful smile touch my lips. Thank you, Julian, I murmur, my voice steady. I can feel Chloe's triumphant glare. She thinks she has damned me to her previous fate. She thinks she has consigned me to a life of emotional neglect and eventual horrific punishment. She has no idea. While she was playing the victim and chasing fleeting affairs, I was learning the inner workings of the Vance conglomerate. I know that Julian, for all his emotional coldness, is a financial savant who controls a silent, vast portion of the family's wealth. He is disinterested in women, yes, but he is also disinterested in micromanaging a wife. He offers freedom and immense resources as long as one does not cross his invisible yet absolute lines. Cashin, for all his public devotion, was a different beast. Insatiable in every appetite, with a taste for the grotesque and a secret circle of friends whose gentlemanly pursuits would make a courtesan blush. He was faithful to me only because I held the keys to his kingdom and the blackmail material that could destroy him. He was a venomous snake, charming until he struck. If Julian is a silent, lethal wolf, then Cashin is the serpent in the grass. And Chloe, my dear reborn sister, has just chosen the serpent. As I stand there playing the demure fiancée, I watch her. She flings herself into Cashin's arms now, playing the part of the sacrificing sister, her eyes wide with fake innocence. My dear sister, she simpers, let me take the difficult path. You deserve a kind man like Julian. I almost laugh. Kind. She has no idea what true kindness is, nor what true cruelty looks like. Cashin, ever the performer, eats it up. He sees her generous act as the pinnacle of wifely virtue. His arm wraps around her, possessive already. I meet Chloe's gaze over his shoulder. A sneer twists my lips, cold and sharp. Let her have him. Let her bask in his temporary performative affection. My dear sister, I say, my voice so quiet only she can truly hear the ice in it. Let me take a guess. How long do you think you'll survive in the hands of a man who collects human peacocks? Her smile falters for a fraction of a second. She doesn't know I know about his specific twisted tastes. But the barb lands. The confusion in her eyes is my first, small victory. The engagement is settled with dizzying speed. The contracts are for all intents and purposes already signed. Chloe is betrothed to Cashin. I am bound to Julian. As the party swirls around us, a new dance beginning, Julian turns to me. His winter-sea eyes study me, and for the first time, I see a flicker of something beyond detached observation. It isn't warmth. It is curiosity. It seems we are to be partners, Miss Alara, he says. I look up at him, no longer feigning shyness. I let him see the steel in my soul. It seems we are, Julian. I promise not to be a disruption. A faint, almost imperceptible smile touches his lips. It doesn't reach his eyes. Disruptions are often the source of the most interesting patterns. He offers me his arm. It is not a gesture of affection but of protocol. A formality. I take it. The sandalwood scent is stronger now. It is the smell of my new battlefield. This time I will not be content with managing a fortune. I will build my own. And I will watch as Chloe's chosen path leads her directly into the gilded cage she so richly deserves. The first move is mine. The game has begun. The days following the engagement are a study in contrasts, a public spectacle orchestrated by my sister. Chloe clings to Cashin's arm like a vine, her laughter a bright, artificial bell that rings through every society column. She is everywhere with him, at gallery openings, charity galas, perched in his private box at the opera. She posts a constant stream of images online, their hands entwined, his lips pressed to her cheek, the massive, flawless diamond solitaire on her finger catching the light. She is building her narrative, the beloved, destined bride of the powerful heir. She video calls me the morning after the engagement, a triumphant gleam in her eyes. She's wearing a silk chemise, and around her neck rests a breathtaking sapphire necklace I recognize from the Vance collection. Her skin is peppered with the evidence of his passion. Alara, isn't it stunning? She purrs, fingering the gem. It's the Starlight Serenade. Cashin told me it went for over 20 million at auction. And he was so attentive last night. This is what a real man is like, Alara. Generous. Affectionate. She doesn't pause for breath. And of course you're marrying into the family too, but tradition is tradition. The eldest son inherits the lion's share. I will be the future Mrs. Vance, the CEO's wife. You. She gives a dismissive little wave. You'll be lucky to get a share of the annual dividends. You were always 3 minutes behind me, Alara. You've always been in my shadow, and now even your husband can't compare to mine. You just have to accept your fate. I take a slow sip of my tea, the porcelain cup warm in my hands. I am in my new apartment, a sleek, modern space in a building Julian owns. It is quiet, tasteful, and empty of his presence. You're celebrating rather early, Chloe, I say, my voice calm. Everyone in this city knows Cashin's reputation. His little black book has more names than the city directory. Once you're married, the parade of mistresses alone will be enough to drive you to distraction. She raises her chin, a picture of defiant confidence. That was the past. He promised me last night that I'm the only one now. He even swore on his future inheritance that if he ever cheats, he'll be struck impotent. She scoffs. He said it's normal for a man of his standing to have distractions before he settles down. But you see, he'll be devoted to me. I can't help the dry laugh that escapes me. If a man's vows could be trusted, pigs would take flight. Especially a man like Cashin, who was raised in a world where everything and everyone has a price. I let the silence hang for a moment, then add, "You sound very sure of yourself." "Of course I am," she retorts, her eyes gleaming. "He's already planning the wedding. Next month. Unlimited budget. All that matters is that I'm happy." Her expression hardens. "So, Ilara, if you're having regrets, it's too late. Julian is your problem now. Stay away from Cashin. If I catch you even looking at him, I'll make you wish you'd never been born." The threat is real. I feel the ghost of the rooftop wind on my skin. I don't bother telling her about the private investigators' reports I've already commissioned, the ones that detail Cashin's medical complications from his wild lifestyle. Nor do I mention the darker whispers, the ones about his parties that sometimes featured more than just human guests. The thought alone makes my skin crawl. My life with Julian, in stark contrast, is one of profound silence. He is a ghost in my new world. He doesn't call. He doesn't visit. His presence is marked only by the arrival of cold, extravagant gifts. A necklace of black pearls. A portfolio of pre-war sketches by a master architect. A deed to a minor commercial property that, according to my quick analysis, generates a healthy passive income. The gifts are worth millions, but they are impersonal, transactional. He is fulfilling a duty. He is either at a remote temple making offerings in deep philosophical debate with monks in Tibet, or flying to Switzerland to consult with a renowned spiritual leader on matters of the soul. A rich, husband-free existence. It is the life many women claim to want. The freedom is intoxicating and the financial power is a potent tool. But it is also lonely. A gilded cage, albeit one with the door wide open. I refuse to be passive. While Chloe plays the socialite, I begin to build. Using the seed money from Julian's gifts and the knowledge from my past life, I make my first moves. I know which tech startups are about to explode, which forgotten neighborhood the new city rail line will run through. I invest quietly, precisely. The returns are immediate and substantial. This is my capital, my foundation. Meanwhile, the war of images continues online. Chloe posts another photo of a romantic candlelit dinner with Cashin. I respond with a picture of the architectural plans for my new property, a bold, modern design captioned, "Building Foundations." Her posts are about love. Mine are about legacy. The comments on my photos begin to shift. They are no longer just about the jewelry or the bags. They are about vision. "Business savvy," someone writes. "A queen in the making," says another. Chloe, infuriated that my quiet power is overshadowing her loud romance, lashes out in my comments. "Wealth is just a worldly possession," she types. "A husband's devotion is the truest treasure." I reply within seconds. Devotion is a feeling. My thoughtful fiancé provides the tools to build empires. That is devotion made tangible. You didn't get any tools. Perhaps yours is only a feeling. The digital slap is heard around our social circle. She video calls me, screaming, her face contorted with rage, but I simply end the call. Let her simmer. Let her make mistakes. The wedding, when it arrives, is a spectacle of grotesque proportions. Chloe and Cashin buy a private atoll for the ceremony, flying in guests on a fleet of chartered jets. The guest list is a who's who of global power players. Chloe clings to Cashin, her smile radiant as they move through the crowd. He is the picture of devotion, his arm a permanent fixture around her waist, shielding her from champagne, whispering in her ear. Looks like a fairy tale. But my eyes, trained from a past life, see the cracks. I see the way his gaze flicks to a brunette across the room, a shared, intimate smile that lasts a fraction of a second too long. I see the redhead by the champagne fountain who catches his eye and gives a slight, almost imperceptible nod. These aren't random guests. They are his past, present, and future. A web of infidelity he has no intention of dismantling. Chloe, blinded by her triumph and the sheer force of her own desire to win, sees none of it. She finds me when Cashin is in the restroom, a rare moment without him. She waves her hand, the massive pink diamond catching the light. 16 carats, flawless, she boasts. Worth over 40 million. One of a kind. Honestly, Alara, I don't mean to be rude, but the little trinkets you post about, I wouldn't even look twice. They're practically junk. I take a bite of a delicate profiterole and smile. My junk is mine to do with as I please. Can you say the same about your jewelry? Is it truly yours, or are you just the temporary mannequin for the Vance family vault? Her face darkens. I've hit the mark. The jewelry is on loan, part of the family collection. She had to get special permission to wear it and will have to return it. He tries to recover. Of course it's mine. Look around, Alara. Everyone who is anyone is here for us. When you marry Julian, it will be a quiet affair in a courthouse. And let me warn you again. Stay away from my husband. I casually drop the rest of my dessert into a nearby bin. Don't worry, Chloe, I say, my voice light and cold. I have no interest in other people's garbage. She isn't entirely wrong about my wedding. There is no fanfare. A week later, Julian and I meet at a registry office on a day deemed auspicious by his astrologer. We sign the documents that bind our lives in the eyes of the law. It takes 10 minutes. Afterwards, he drives me to a sales office for a new, ultra-exclusive residential development. He leads me to a model of a sprawling, minimalist villa complex nestled against a private forest. It's yours, he says simply. Fully paid. The deeds are in your name. It is a gift worth hundreds of millions. The scale of his generosity is so vast it feels unreal. This is his language. Not words, not affection, but absolute, staggering financial endorsement. Then comes the rest of it, delivered in that same calm, detached tone. I will be busy. I don't have time for companionship. If you want anything, buy it. Don't bother me unless it's critical. If I need you, I will find you. Don't argue with my family in my presence. Don't create scandals. And with that he is gone. Back to his temples and his meditations. I stand alone in the echoing silence of the sales office, the keys to a colossal villa in my hand. The agent looks at me with a mixture of awe and pity. But I feel neither. I feel a fierce, burning purpose. This is not a cage. This is a launch pad. I have my freedom. I have my capital. And I have the memories of a life already lived. The foundation is laid. Now it is time to build my kingdom, and watch as Chloe's fairy tale castle begins to crumble around her. The silence in my life is not emptiness. It is the calm before the storm I am about to unleash. The silence Julian gifted me became my sanctuary and my forge. For 10 days I was a whirlwind of quiet activity. The villa was not a home, it was my corporate headquarters. I hired a discreet, efficient staff, installed a bank of monitors tracking global markets, and my days were a blur of video conferences, contract negotiations, and strategic planning. My past life knowledge was a cheat code. I shorted stocks I knew were poised to collapse, invested heavily in green tech companies that were months from a major breakthrough, and acquired a portfolio of digital assets, domain names, social media handles, that would soon be worth fortunes. The capital from Julian's gifts multiplied at an alarming rate. I was no longer just spending his money, I was building an empire parallel to and independent of the Vance conglomerate. On the 10th day he returned. I was in the study, analyzing geological survey reports for a lithium deposit I intended to acquire, when I felt the shift in the atmosphere. The subtle hum of the house changed. He stood in the doorway as still and unexpected as a statue in a garden. He wore simple, dark linen clothes, and the scent of sandalwood and cold mountain air preceded him. "Ilara," he said, his voice the same low, unreadable timbre. "We have been married 10 days. You have spent over $150 million. I didn't look up from my screen immediately, letting the number hang in the air. I finally met his gaze, my expression neutral. Your black card has a daily limit. Otherwise, the figure would be higher. A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips. Is like a crack in ice. Aren't you afraid I'll consider you wasteful? I leaned back, steepling my fingers. Incompetent men call women wasteful. You, Julian, are not an incompetent man. If I asked for the stars, you'd contract a private aerospace firm to retrieve an asteroid. Besides, I gestured to the screens, it's not spending. It's deploying capital. The returns are already exceeding the outlay. It's all marital assets, isn't it? What's yours is mine, and what's mine is, fortunately, growing exponentially. No man is entirely immune to flattery, especially when it's woven with truth. The ice in his eyes didn't melt, but it seemed to become more reflective, taking me in with a new intensity. He moved into the room, his movements fluid and silent. He went to a small sideboard where I kept a tea set and began to prepare a pot with a ritualistic grace I recognized from my past life. The same focused attention he gave his prayer beads. You are different from other women, he stated, not looking at me. They acquire baubles. You acquire land, intellectual property, futures. Marrying me must feel like a limitation. This was his first true acknowledgement of my capability. I inclined my head. A partnership requires both parties to bring assets to the table. I'm merely doing my part. Though I admit your financial runway makes for a very short takeoff. He brought a cup of tea to me. The aroma was exquisite, a rare, smoky oolong I knew cost more per gram than gold. If you wish to invest or start a business, I will provide backing. Resources, contacts, funding. Name it. He took a sip from his own cup. The reason for my visit. A colleague is interested in a parcel of land you own in the northern reaches. He wishes to build a research campus. Name your price. The northern reaches land. I'd bought it with the proceeds from the villa he'd gifted me, leveraging every dollar. With the new federal infrastructure bill about to be announced, its value was set to quintuple. I had planned to develop it myself, but it was a long-term project. Julian's offer was a shortcut to a massive liquid profit. I smiled, a genuine one this time. We're family. Your friend is my friend. Why talk about money? I'll have my lawyer messenger the deed to your office tomorrow. His hand, holding the delicate porcelain cup, froze mid-air. He was a man who dealt in the unspoken language of power and debt, and I had just refused to play. By not naming a price, I forced him into a position where his repayment would have to be immeasurably greater, or he would risk appearing cheap. He was sharp, he saw the trap immediately. He studied me for a long moment, his gaze like a physical weight. What is your angle, Alara? I decided on a sliver of truth. You've met my family. They see people as transactions. Even if it hadn't been you, it would have been someone else, a trade for influence. But you are the best possible outcome. You value peace. I value enterprise. We are complementary. It's a mutually beneficial partnership. I saw it then, a flicker of understanding in his winter sea eyes. He had spent a lifetime being the second son, told to be humble, to not outshine his brother, to find solace in the spiritual. In me, he saw a reflection of the ambition he had been forced to suppress. I was the unrestrained ID to his disciplined superego. The smile that finally reached his eyes was small but real. A partnership, he echoed as if tasting the word. From that day something shifted. He began, cautiously, to integrate me into his world. Not the world of society parties, but his real world, the inner sanctum of his influence. He took me to private gatherings, small dinners in discreet rooms where the other guests weren't the flashy heirs of Chloe's circle, but the true architects of power. A reclusive tech billionaire, the head of a sovereign wealth fund, a former cabinet secretary. These were people who, in my past life, would have required 6 months of negotiation for a 15-minute meeting. I didn't try to impress them. I listened. And when I spoke, it was with the confidence of someone who had already seen the economic trends they were still predicting. I discussed algorithmic trading, the geopolitical implications of rare earth mineral deposits, the future of quantum computing. I saw the moment their polite interest turned to genuine respect. Logan watched it all. His attitude toward me thawed from detached observation to something resembling partnership. He poured my tea, remembered which specific tea it was I preferred, and once he quietly secured a zoning permit for a new data center I was building after I'd mentioned a bureaucratic delay. He was, to my astonishment, becoming an asset. Meanwhile, Chloe's world was curdling. She had been given control of the Vance Hotel Group's European division and a legacy jewelry brand. She appeared constantly in the media, hailed as the glamorous heiress. To be fair, the family had to maintain appearances, so I was also given a role. They handed me the company's most notorious failure, a nearly defunct fashion house named Ethel. It was a joke. The brand had been a money pit for a decade, a revolving door of creative directors and marketing campaigns. The industry called it Vance's vanity project, the dumbest division in the entire conglomerate. Julian frowned when he heard. The maritime logistics division is outperforming. I'll speak to my father. Have them reassign you. I shook my head, a slow, confident smile spreading across my face. No. I like a challenge. Give me 1 month. His eyebrow arched. You're that confident? I won't claim expertise in every field, I said. But turning Ethel into a desirable brand? I've done it before. I didn't specify in which life. He said he believed me, but a shadow of doubt remained. He stopped his temple retreats, his philosophical debates. Instead, he started appearing at the Ethel offices, a silent, intimidating presence in his dark suits. He thought he was protecting me from corporate politics. He quickly learned I didn't need protection. I walked in on my first day and unleashed a purge. I fired 2/3 of the dead weight, nepotism hires and complacent veterans who had driven away real talent. They sputtered and threatened to go to the board. Julian merely stood behind me, a silent statue of support, and they folded, resigning by the afternoon. Next, I went to the nation's top design school and poached the 5 most promising final-year students, offering them salaries that made their professors blush. I launched an internal weekly design competition with massive cash prizes and guaranteed jobs for the winners. I gave them creative freedom and a budget to travel to international competitions. Talent flocked to us. Simultaneously, I hired a ruthless digital marketing team. We bypassed traditional media and launched a viral campaign that positioned Ethel not as a stale legacy brand, but as the avant-garde voice of a new generation. We held a guerrilla fashion show in a derelict power station, inviting every influential critic, celebrity, and buyer. With the Vance name behind it, no one dared decline. The collection, a stunning fusion of architectural minimalism and streetwear edge, sold out in hours. Pre-orders for the next season crashed the website. A decade of losses was erased in a single night, replaced by a staggering profit. I was hailed as a miracle worker, a rising star. And while I was on that trajectory, I took a moment to deal with Chloe's new domains. I anonymously leaked photos of filthy conditions in her flagship Paris hotel, maids using the same rags for toilets and sinks. I had a popular style influencer expose several pieces from her jewelry line as blatant, overpriced knockoffs. The hits were precise and devastating. Chloe, who had vowed to outshine me, was now scrambling, spending a fortune on PR firms to suppress the scandals. The public saw her for what she was, an empty figurehead. At the quarterly family dinner, a simple affair at the Vance patriarch's estate, the energy had shifted. Normally, Cashin held court, the heir apparent. But this time, the moment I entered with Julian, the room turned to us. They crowded around, toasting my success with Ethel. Even Grandpa Vance, who had always doted on Cashin, invited Julian to sit beside him. For me, it was just corporate politics. For Julian, who had never once been the center of positive attention in his family, it was a revelation. I saw his posture change, the subtle straightening of his spine. He drank a glass of wine, something I'd never seen him do, and by the end of the night he was not drunk but softened at the edges. When we returned home, the detached monk was gone. In his place was a man with desire burning in his eyes. He was bold, alluring, and I am not a saint. To let such a man go to waste would have been a sin against nature. I was very satisfied. And Julian, once he had shed his monastic restraint, did nothing by halves. The distance between us evaporated. He was present, intensely so. His generosity evolved from impersonal gifts to deeply considered ones. First, a stunning Art Deco necklace that had belonged to his grandmother. Then the deed to a historic building in the financial district. Finally, he handed me a sealed envelope. Inside was a document transferring 5% of his personal stake in the Vance conglomerate to my name. It wasn't the value, though the annual dividends were in the tens of millions. It was the meaning. He had made me a shareholder, a part of the empire. He looked at me, his gaze clear and direct. A seat on the board will follow. You've earned it. I took the document, my fingers steady despite the thunder in my chest. This was more than I had ever held in my first life. This was a foothold on the mountain itself. Chloe, of course, had received nothing but scandals and losses. The resentment in her eyes when we passed in the corporate headquarters was a physical force. But with Julian constantly at my side, she never dared speak. That night she finally video called me. The facade was gone, replaced by raw, seething jealousy. "Feeling proud of yourself, Ilara?" she spat. "Everyone says you're so amazing." I took a slow sip of water. Shouldn't I be? The brand was a joke for a decade. Now it's on the cover of every major magazine. They're calling it the turnaround of the century. Is there a problem? "You just got lucky," she screamed. "And so what if you did? My husband is still the heir. I'm the future Mrs. Vance. Every profit you and your husband make still flows through us. When Cashin takes over, the first thing I'll do is have you removed. Just wait." I let a slow, cold smile spread across my face. "Remove me with what authority, Chloe? I own a part of the company now." I leaned closer to the screen. "You should pray your brother-in-law remains quiet and avoids a fight. Because if he doesn't, the Vance conglomerate is about to get a new CEO." I ended the call, leaving her in a void of her own panic. The battle lines were no longer just between sisters. They were drawn through the heart of the empire itself. And for the first time I was not just a player on the board. I was a queen, and I was ready to checkmate a king. Panic is a potent poison. It clouds judgment and breeds desperation. After my call, Chloe, infected with both, began to pressure Cashin. She nagged him to be more involved, to launch impressive projects, to prove his worth. She was trying to arm her champion for a war she suddenly realized she could lose. It was a catastrophic miscalculation. Cashin Vance had been coddled and adored since birth. He was a creature of impulse and pleasure, utterly unequipped for pressure or hardship. Chloe's demands were a dissonant, irritating noise in the symphony of his indulgent life. His charm, which he wielded like a weapon, began to curdle into petulance. The explosion came at a family pool party 2 weeks later. I was there with Julian, who was quietly discussing the lithium mine acquisition with his father. A conversation that would have been unthinkable months before. Chloe was hovering near Cashin, her voice a persistent, needling buzz. We all heard her hiss, "Just need to show more initiative like Julian." Cashin snapped. He didn't just raise his voice. He unleashed a torrent of venom, sharp enough to slice through the lazy afternoon air. "Are you quite finished?" he snarled, his handsome face contorted. "You constantly compare me to my brother. If you find him so damn impressive, why didn't you marry him? Who the hell are you to lecture me? If you were half as competent as Ilara, you wouldn't have run the Paris division into the ground. Marrying you was the single greatest mistake of my life." The silence was absolute. The gentle splash of the pool waterfall sounded like a roar. Chloe, who had been pampered and preened her entire life, stood frozen. The public humiliation was a brand on her skin. Her face flushed a mottled, ugly red. I was only doing it for you," she stammered, her voice trembling with a toxic mix of fury and hurt. "You're the eldest. You're supposed to lead. The hotel issues weren't my fault. I asked for your help and you were always busy. It was my first time." "Excuses!" Cashin roared, cutting her off. He took a step toward her, and for a terrifying second I thought he might hit her. "I am sick to death of your pathetic dramatics." He turned on his heel, grabbed his keys from a nearby table and stormed out, leaving her alone in the center of a circle of stunned, silent relatives. Her dignity was atomized. The mask of the perfect, glamorous wife had been ripped away, revealing the desperate, scrambling woman beneath. I wasn't finished. That very night I set my plan in motion. I knew from my past life about Cashin's one true, obsessive love. A person he could never publicly acknowledge, a flame that had burned for years. Her name was Sasha, a stunning androgynous model and performance artist who was the toast of the city's underground queer scene. Cashin was utterly, ruinously infatuated with her. I arranged for a chance encounter. I had a trusted contact mention to Cashin that Sasha would be at his favorite, most discreet members-only club that night. Then I anonymously sent Chloe the club's location and the number of his private booth, along with a single blurry photo of Sasha from behind, knowing it would be enough to trigger her. Half an hour later, Chloe stormed into the club, a phalanx of her mean girl friends behind her. She was ready for a catfight, expecting to find some vapid socialite. She was not prepared for Sasha. What happened next was a grotesque ballet. Cashin, who in the past had always let Chloe scream and slap at his mistresses, this time moved to shield Sasha. The rejection was a physical blow to Chloe. Enraged, she lunged at him and he, drunk and disgusted, slapped her across the face. Twice. The sound was like gunshots in the plush room. Chloe completely lost control, a feral thing punching and kicking. Cashin, unleashed, hit back without restraint. His friends, a pack of sycophants, didn't intervene. They cheered him on, chanting, "Finally! Teach her a lesson." It wasn't until a server, horrified, called security that it ended. Chloe was taken to the hospital with 3 broken ribs, a fractured cheekbone and a concussion. The entire Vance family descended on the hospital's luxury VIP suite. Chloe, swathed in bandages, played the martyr surrounded by flowers and sympathy. Everyone took turns comforting her, condemning Cashin's brutality, demanding he apologize. Cashin, still reeking of alcohol and defiance, offered no apology. Instead, he shouted at her from the doorway, "She deserved it." A shrill, controlling harpy who doesn't know her place. That was enough for Grandpa Vance. He strode forward and slapped his golden grandson across the face with a crack that silenced the room. "You wretched boy. One more scandal and I will cut you out of the will myself." The threat of disinheritance was the only language Cashin truly understood. He sobered instantly, dropping to his knees, begging for forgiveness, promising it would never happen again. To prove his sincerity, he promised to gift Chloe a $60 million estate. And just like that, the fight was over. The martyr was paid off. She stopped her crying and claimed she had only acted out of love. They reconciled, a perfect, pathetic pair. A trash man and a delusional woman, bound by money and mutual toxicity. After the incident, Chloe asked to see me alone. She tried to justify the unjustifiable. "You know, Ilara," she said, her voice weak from behind her bandages, "every marriage has its fights. If a couple never argues, it means they don't care. Don't let my injuries fool you. It's not that bad. And besides, now everyone sees how patient and forgiving I am. Phil knows he was wrong and I have a new estate. So really I won." I couldn't stifle my laugh. "You're cheap, Chloe. You nearly died and all it cost was a $60 million bribe to buy your silence." She sneered, the gesture painful on her bruised face. "That's because you don't understand love, Ilara. Your husband is never home. You live like a wealthy widow. You think you're better off? At least my husband comes home to me. How many times a year do you even see Julian?" I chuckled, looking at her with genuine amusement. "You might be right. I don't know much about the games couples play. But I do know the kinds of games your dear husband plays don't discriminate. Men, women, it's all the same to him. Just a friendly suggestion, Chloe. You should probably go get a full STD panel." Her face turned the color of parchment. That's impossible. He wouldn't." But even as she denied it, her hand was frantically pressing the nurse's call button. While she was getting tested, I didn't rest. I anonymously released the footage of Cashin with Sasha and the video of him beating Chloe across multiple platforms. It was prime scandal time. A double delight for the internet. The results came back for Chloe. No pregnancy. But multiple, serious sexually transmitted diseases, ones that would require lifelong management and made having children a distant, dangerous prospect. As for Cashin, his unraveling was just beginning. The videos went viral. The public turned on him, calling him a monster. Vance conglomerate stock plummeted, losing nearly $500 million in market value in a single day. The company convened an emergency board meeting. Cashin, still a vice president, was forced to resign on the spot. And I wasn't done. I released more footage. Videos of Cashin and his friends at their wildest parties, evidence of drug use and orgies. The police were called. Raids followed. Cashin was hauled in for questioning. Though a drug test eventually cleared him, the image of him being escorted in handcuffs was burned into the public consciousness. His reputation was ash. Just like that, Cashin Vance was formally disqualified from the succession. All his shares were stripped and transferred to Julian. I was in our home office reviewing the final contracts for the lithium mine, when Julian found me. He was holding a simple wooden box. "He's finished," I said, not looking up. "I know," he replied. His voice was calm, but there was a new energy radiating from him. He opened the box. Inside, on a bed of black velvet, was a bracelet of intricately carved lotus seeds, strung on a resilient, almost invisible wire. "I made this for you. My master blessed it. It's for protection." He took my wrist and fastened it. His fingers, usually so cool, were warm. The beads were smooth and solid against my skin. It was the most personal, thoughtful gift I had ever received from anyone. He looked at the bracelet on my wrist, then into my eyes. "The board meeting is tomorrow. They're going to name me Sue." He paused. "I'm appointing you as vice chairman." I finally looked up, meeting his gaze. The winter in his eyes was gone, replaced by a quiet, burning certainty. We were no longer just partners in a marriage of convenience. We were partners in a takeover. "I accept," I said. The power we had just seized was immense. But I knew, with a cold certainty that settled in my bones, that Chloe's humiliation was complete, and her rage would now be absolute. The final, bloody act was yet to come. She had tried to kill me once before. He would most certainly try again. The board meeting was a coronation draped in the somber cloth of necessity. The air in the Vance Holdings boardroom was thick with the scent of old money and fresh anxiety. Julian sat at the head of the vast, obsidian table, his posture unervingly calm, as if he were meditating in a temple rather than seizing control of a global empire. I sat to his right, the new vice chairman. The lotus seed bracelet felt heavy and alive on my wrist, a tangible token of the shift in our alliance. Julian's voice, when he spoke, was not loud, but it carved through the room's tension. "I am not more capable than Vice Chairman Alara," he began, his gaze sweeping over the assembled, skeptical faces of the old guard. "If this company is to survive and reach the pinnacle of this industry, it must be in her hands. Do not speak to me of tradition or outdated notions of hierarchy. I will state this clearly. Not one person in this room, myself included, possesses her combination of vision and execution. Make no mistake. We need her to lead. She does not need this title. We need her." The silence that followed was profound, broken only by the soft hum of the climate control. Then one by one the board members, men and women who had watched my rise with a mixture of awe and resentment, bowed their heads. "Chairman Vance," they murmured to Julian. Then turning to me, "Vice Chairman Vance." The power was no longer just financial or strategic. It was absolute, official. I was no longer the power behind the throne. I was its co-regent. In the years that followed, I wielded that power with a focus that became legendary. Under my direction, Vance Holdings didn't just recover. It transformed. We shed deadweight divisions and aggressively acquired international luxury brands, tech firms and renewable energy companies. We entered markets previously thought impenetrable. My name, Alara Vance, became synonymous with ruthless efficiency and elegant ambition. I was featured on covers of magazines that had once only chronicled Chloe's parties, hailed as the architect of a new era of corporate power. Julian, true to his nature, receded from the daily glare of the spotlight. But he was not absent. He was my anchor and my sharpest counsel. Our relationship had evolved into a deep, quiet understanding, a partnership forged in mutual respect and a shared, dry amusement at the world we commanded. The man who had once offered only silence now shared his thoughts freely with me, his mind a razor-sharp instrument honed by a lifetime of observation. In return, I never let him walk behind me. We were equals, side by side, a united front that was both impenetrable and immensely powerful. Meanwhile, Chloe's world had shrunk to the size of a prison cell. Phil's life, after his very public downfall, became a cold, bitter exile. The parties, the sycophants, the endless stream of admirers. All of it vanished. He had nothing but time, and he spent it drowning in resentment, blaming Chloe for his ruin. If she hadn't stormed into that bar, his sins would have remained in the shadows. His drinking worsened, and his abuse of her became a daily ritual of savagery. The private investigator I kept on retainer sent me footage so vile I could only watch seconds of it. He was an animal, and he was breaking her piece by piece. Chloe, the vibrant, preening socialite, was gone. In her place was a gaunt, hollow-eyed woman, her vanity stripped away by violence and despair, but her bitterness remained, festering like an open wound. The 5% stake I held in the company was a constant, galling reminder of my victory and her utter defeat. I knew the debt from our past life was coming due. She had killed me once. She would try again. So I prepared. I consolidated all the evidence. The videos of Phil's depravity, the financial records of his fraud and embezzlement, the shipping manifests for his smuggling operations. I was building a case that would bury him forever. It was then that Chloe reached out. Her message was brief, laced with a false, fragile sweetness. She asked to meet. For old time's sake. She even thoughtfully suggested the place. The rooftop garden of the Vance corporate headquarters. The very building from which she had pushed me in another life. The symmetry was not lost on me. It was a challenge. A taunt. So I agreed. I went alone, but I was not unprotected. A discreet panic button was sewn into the sleeve of my tailored jacket, linked directly to security and the police. I stepped out into the cool evening air. The city sprawled below us, a glittering map of the kingdom I now ruled. Chloe stood near the edge, her silhouette dramatic against the dying light. She wore a simple, expensive dress, but it hung loosely on her frame. The skin on her arms and neck, visible in the ambient light, was a tapestry of fading purple and yellow bruises. "Silly sister," she said, her voice a dry rasp. The false sweetness was gone, replaced by a cold, stark malice. "You're still so easy to fool." I feigned confusion, playing my part. "What are you talking about, Chloe?" She took a step toward me, her smile a grotesque slash. "Do you believe in reincarnation?" She didn't wait for an answer. "It doesn't matter. I'll tell you straight. In our past life I was the one who killed you. I pushed you. This is the 50th floor. If you fall from here your body will be pulp. An absolutely terrifying and painful death." She took a deep, shuddering breath, her eyes glittering with pure, undiluted hate. "Originally I wanted Julian to torture you to death in this life, but you somehow twisted him too. No matter. It just means I have to take care of it myself. Once you're gone he'll be shattered. You won't want the company anymore. Things will go back to how they should be. I'll be Mrs. Vance again. And he'll love me like he used to." With a swift, practiced motion she pulled a small, sleek knife from her waistband. The steel glinted in the twilight. She pressed the tip against my abdomen, her expression deranged with triumph. "Any last words before you die? If I'm in a good mood I might even grant a final wish." I didn't flinch. I smiled faintly. "Since you're being so honest, let me share a secret too. I've known all along that Phil is human garbage, a useless degenerate with STDs because I was reborn just like you." Her face contorted in disbelief. "Then why the hell did you even come up here?" My voice dropped, becoming cold and deliberate, each word a shard of ice. "Because this time I want you to know exactly what it feels like to fall and die as a pile of broken flesh." I reached out as if to shove her. It was a feint, but it worked. Startled, she panicked and instinctively thrust the knife forward. The blade bit into the reinforced lining of my jacket, but not deep enough to cause serious injury. It was the signal. At that exact moment the rooftop access door burst open. Armed police officers swarmed out, weapons drawn. "Drop the weapon. Now," one of them shouted. Chloe froze, the knife clattering to the concrete, her face a mask of stunned incomprehension. I stepped back, lowering my voice to a mocking whisper only she could hear. "My dear sister, this is why I came. Did you really think I'd let you die that easily? That would be far too merciful." Realization dawned, and with it, a shrieking feral fury. She lunged at me not for the knife, but to wrap her arms around me and drag us both over the edge. "I'll take you with me," she screamed. But the police were faster. An officer moved with blurring speed, sweeping her legs out from under her. She hit the ground hard, the fight gone out of her in a guttural sob. I looked down at her, a pitiable, broken heap on the cold concrete. "Congratulations, Chloe," I said, my voice calm and utterly devoid of emotion. "You were facing 5 to 10 years. With attempted murder of a public figure, it's 15. She was sentenced to 15 years in a maximum security prison. I made a single, discreet phone call. I had long ago arranged certain understandings with individuals inside. She would be welcomed by the very worst. Every single day of those 15 years would be a living hell. And the day she got out, that would be her true judgment. As for Phil, the evidence I had compiled was overwhelming. Statutory rape, smuggling, fraud, racketeering. He received a 25-year sentence, the maximum. Scum like him is the bottom of the prison hierarchy. I didn't have to lift a finger. He would be destroyed from the inside out, a fate far more fitting than a quick push from a roof. The day after Chloe's sentencing, Julian formally stepped down as CEO and announced me as his successor. At the shareholder meeting, he stood beside me, his hand resting lightly on the back of my chair. "The future of Vance Holdings is here," he said, his voice carrying through the silent, packed room. He looked at me, and the quiet pride in his eyes was worth more than any stock portfolio. "And her name is Elara Vance." I took my seat at the head of the table, the same obsidian table where my coronation had begun. I smiled, a small, confident curve of my lips, and raised my hand. "Well then," I said, my voice clear and steady, echoing in the hushed room. "Let's begin." Years flowed into one another, marked not by seasons but by quarterly reports and global expansions. Vance Holdings, under my leadership, solidified its place among the top 5 conglomerates in the world. We weren't just rich. We were influential, our tendrils woven into the very fabric of the global economy. My name, Elara Vance, was no longer just a byline for success. It was a symbol of an era. For the world, I was the face of modern female power. For the business world, I was a legend whose strategic foresight bordered on prescience. Julian remained my constant. He had fully embraced his role as the power behind the throne, my most trusted advisor and my sanctuary. The man who once sought enlightenment in remote monasteries now found it in the quiet rhythm of our life together. We were a perfect, self-contained unit. He taught me the art of stillness, of finding calm in the eye of the corporate hurricane. I, in turn, kept him connected to the vibrant, pulsing world he had once rejected. We traveled together not for business but for discovery. We walked through ancient ruins and modern art installations, our conversations a seamless blend of philosophy and finance. The lotus seed bracelet never left my wrist. It was a reminder, not of the danger that had passed, but of the partnership that had saved me from it. The day finally arrived when Chloe was released from prison. I didn't go to see her. I felt no need to gaze upon the ruins of my enemy. Some debts are paid not with grand gestures but with silence. Some are paid by the simple, crushing weight of being forgotten. The world had long since moved on from the scandal of Chloe Vance. She was a footnote, a cautionary tale. Phil never made it out. A shiv in the prison yard, a story so common it barely made the news. A man born with every advantage, destroyed by the very appetites he thought he controlled. His name was erased, his reputation buried under the mountain of his crimes. One evening I stood on the rooftop terrace of our new penthouse, the very building that now housed the global headquarters of Vance Holdings. It was not the same building from which I had fallen, nor the one where Chloe had been arrested. This was a new construction, a spire of glass and steel that pierced the clouds, a monument to what I had built. Below, the city I commanded twinkled like a field of captured stars. My reflection in the floor-to-ceiling glass was a woman of poise and undeniable power. The ghost of the girl who had been pushed, the woman who had feared betrayal, was gone. In her place was someone who had died and rebuilt herself from the ashes, stronger and more formidable than before. The soft sound of the terrace door sliding open broke the silence. It was Julian. He held 2 cups of steaming tea and a small, familiar wooden box. "You're working late," he said, his voice a soft rumble in the quiet night. "Just admiring the view," I replied, turning to him. He handed me a cup and then opened the box. Inside, on the same bed of black velvet, was a new string for the lotus seed bracelet, woven from a rare, impossibly strong silk. "The old string was wearing thin," he explained. "I thought it was time for a renewal." He took my wrist, his touch as gentle and sure as it had been the first time he fastened it. As he worked on the clasp, he said, "You still wear it." I looked down at the beads, worn smooth and warm from years against my skin. "It still protects me," I said, and it was the truth. It protected me not from external threats, but from forgetting who I was and the alliance that had made my victory possible. He finished and took my hand, lacing his fingers through mine. Together we turned back to the skyline, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of fire and gold. Some victories are loud, heralded with trumpets and headlines. Others are quiet. They are felt in the stillness after the storm, in the warmth of a hand in yours, in the unshakable knowledge that you have not only survived but conquered. I had avenged my past, secured my present, and built a legacy for my future. I didn't just win the game. I rewrote the rules. I chose my peace, my partner, and my power on my own terms. And that, in the end, was my greatest revenge and my greatest freedom. The quiet, complete, and utter victory of Alara Vance. The news of Chloe's release was a small, insignificant blip on the radar of my life. A ripple that barely reached the shores of the empire I had built. I had a team that monitored such things, and their report was as clinical as any other. Subject released at 9:07 a.m. No current contacts of significance. Residing in a state-funded halfway house. I felt nothing. No triumph, no pity. She was a closed chapter, a ghost whose haunting had long since ended. My focus was on the living, breathing entity that was Vance Holdings. We were on the verge of finalizing a merger that would create the largest renewable energy network in the hemisphere, a deal that was my personal brainchild, a legacy project that would outlive me. Julian, however, was less detached. The day the report came in, he found me in my home office, the cityscape sprawling behind me like a personal command center. "She's out," he said, his voice neutral. "I know," I replied, not looking up from the holographic display of the merger's financial projections. "Are you concerned?" This made me look up. He was leaning against the doorframe, his expression unreadable, but I had learned to see the subtle tension in his shoulders. The man who had once bound a woman with prayer beads still lived within the calm, devoted partner I knew. That part of him was fiercely, primally protective. "No," I said, and it was the absolute truth. "She is a phantom, Julian. She has no money, no allies, no name that holds any power. The world that she knew, the world she thrived in, is gone. It's my world now." He nodded slowly, the tension easing. "The board is expecting you in an hour. The final vote on the Etheria merger." The Etheria merger. It was more than a business deal. It was a statement. It would transition the vast, often dirty engine of the Vance Empire towards a cleaner, smarter future. It was the ultimate repudiation of the old guard, of men like Cashin and the values they represented. It was my masterpiece. The board meeting was a formality. The room, once a den of wolves waiting for me to stumble, was now filled with my pack. They were men and women I had appointed, promoted, or whose loyalty I had earned through undeniable success. When I walked in, they stood. Not out of forced protocol but out of respect. I took my seat at the head of the table. Julian sat to my right, a silent pillar of support. "The Etheria merger," I began, my voice clear and carrying. "This is not merely an acquisition. It is an evolution. It is the final definitive step in transforming Vance Holdings from a relic of the past into the architect of the future. The vote is yours." The ayes were unanimous. As the final vote was recorded, a rare, genuine smile touched my lips. I had done it. I had not just taken the company, I had fundamentally changed its DNA. Later, in the quiet of our car, Julian took my hand. The lotus seeds were cool against his skin. "You were magnificent," he said, his thumb stroking the back of my hand. "You have given my family's name a purpose it never had." It was the highest praise he could have offered. Weeks turned into months. The merger proceeded with flawless efficiency. My life was a whirlwind of global summits, strategic meetings, and the quiet, profound satisfaction of building something that mattered. I had long since stopped thinking about Chloe. But the past, even when it is a ghost, can sometimes find a way to whisper. I was leaving a charity gala, my security detail a discreet bubble around me, when a figure detached itself from the shadows of an adjacent alley. It was a woman, hunched and wrapped in a shabby coat, her face gaunt and lined with a hardness that no amount of privilege could smooth. It was Chloe. Our eyes met for a single suspended moment across the glittering expanse of the red carpet. There was no rage left in her gaze, no malice. There was only a hollow, bottomless emptiness. She looked like a shell, a creature that had been scoured clean from the inside out by years of institutional brutality. She saw me, Alara Vance, in a gown that cost more than she would see in a lifetime, surrounded by power and light. And in that moment I saw the final, complete victory. Not just over her but over everything she represented. The petty jealousies, the desperate need for external validation, the belief that a man was the ultimate prize. It had all been burned away, leaving only this hollowed-out husk. She didn't approach. She didn't speak. She simply turned and melted back into the darkness from which she had emerged. My head of security, a man named Evans, stepped closer. "Ma'am? Do you want us to?" "No," I said, my voice steady. "Let her go. There was nothing she could take from me. Not my peace, not my power, not my future. Her very existence was a testament to my absolute win." When I got home, Julian was waiting as he always was. He took one look at my face and knew. "You saw her." "I saw a ghost," I corrected, slipping off my heels. "And she saw a queen." He didn't ask for details. He simply poured 2 glasses of wine and led me to the terrace. We stood in silence, looking out at our kingdom. "It's over," I said, the words a final exhalation of a burden I hadn't realized I was still carrying. "It has been for a long time," he replied. "You just needed to see it for yourself." He was right. The last thread tying me to that old life, that old death, had finally snapped. Chloe was no longer my sister, my rival, my murderer. She was a stranger. And in her eyes, I had seen the reflection of my own unassailable strength. The game was not just won. The board had been put away. A decade later, the name Alara Vance was etched not just in business ledgers, but in history books. The Etheria Initiative had revolutionized clean energy access across 3 continents. The philanthropic foundation Julian and I chaired had funded schools, hospitals, and research centers, creating a legacy of life and progress to counter the Vance family's previously murky history. We had built a world in our image, powerful, purposeful, and peaceful. I stood at the window of my office, now more of a serene library than a corporate war room. The view was the same, but the woman looking out was not. The sharp edges of ambition had been softened by time and fulfillment. The fire still burned, but it was a steady flame, not a wildfire. Julian entered, his footsteps quiet on the thick rug. Age had silvered his temples but had only deepened the calm certainty in his eyes. In his hands he held not a wooden box but a simple folder. "The final report," he said, placing it on my desk. "The last of Phil's assets have been liquidated. The funds have been transferred to the restitution fund for his victims." I nodded. It was the last loose end. The very last trace of that toxic past had been cleaned up, transformed into something that could do good. "And Chloe?" I asked, not out of concern but a sense of administrative finality. "She passed away last month," he said, his voice gentle. "Pneumonia. In a public hospital. There was no one to claim the body. It was handled by the state." I felt a quiet, somber closure. Not for the sister I had lost, for she had been lost to me long before either of our deaths, but for the painful, twisted story we had written across 2 lifetimes. It was a story that was now definitively over. "It's a sad end," I murmured. "It was the end she chose long ago," Julian replied. He came to stand beside me, following my gaze to the horizon. "You offered her a different path even at the beginning of this life. She chose vengeance. You chose victory. There is a world of difference." He was right. Victory builds. Vengeance only destroys. "Do you ever think about it?" I asked him, leaning my head against his shoulder. "How different it all could have been." "I think," he said, wrapping an arm around me, "that the universe, in its infinite mystery, gave us both a second chance. It gave me a partner instead of a prisoner. It gave you a throne instead of a tomb. I do not question the mystery. I am merely grateful for the outcome." We stood like that for a long time, 2 pillars supporting a shared, peaceful sky. The frantic drive, the constant calculation, the fear of falling, it was all gone. What remained was the profound satisfaction of a life lived without compromise, a love built on mutual respect, and a legacy that would endure. I had returned from the dead with a heart full of vengeance, determined to win a game of power and spite. But somewhere along the way I had started playing a different game entirely. I had built, I had loved, I had healed the wounds of a corrupt dynasty. I looked down at the lotus seed bracelet, its silk cord still strong, its beads worn smooth and warm. It was a map of my journey from a vengeful ghost to a woman fully, completely alive. The greatest revenge is not violence or humiliation. It is not wealth or power, though I had those in abundance. The greatest revenge is a life lived so well, so fully, and so peacefully that the past loses all its power to hurt you. It is looking at the ruins of what tried to break you and realizing you used the stones to build a palace. I had conquered my enemies. I had conquered the corporate world. But the most important conquest had been the one over my own soul. I had found peace on my own terms. And as the sun set, painting the sky in colors of deep gold and tranquil purple, I knew with absolute certainty that I had won it all. The end.